the Countryside Podcasts with Chris Skinner.
What a fantastic morning to arrive at High Ash Farm just a week into April, and we've got temperatures in the 20s. It's a sort of hazy blue sky, but it feels actually unseasonably warm. And I'm in the pickup truck with Chris, and we're watching, well, this is your sort of start of the year, really, isn't it?
Matthew, welcome to High Ash Farm, and a very big special welcome for this week's Countryside Podcast, because although my birthday's in September, I have another special event around about the first week of April, and it was one day late this year on April the 7th. Normally the first swallow then arrives, but that didn't happen this year. I had 9 in a batch, males and females, and without any hesitation they got on cleaning the nests, repairing them, and it's just been a hive of activity. I would think I'm probably up to 15 adults now. Now, for me, that's a really good sign that the northern migration has been successful this year, crossing the Sahara from South Africa, where they spend the winter. German swallows and sort of Eastern European countries, really, the swallows there spend their winter in the Congo Basin, about 1,000 miles further north. But nevertheless, our swallows that visit here in East Anglia and the UK carry out about a 5,000 mile northerly trip for something weighing 3/4 of an ounce, and not to be sort of dismissive of them, but a brain smaller than a garden pea.
So usually there's one bird that arrives as a sort of forerunner.
Yes.
But this year they've come almost mob-handed, and there's probably more than 9 now here, is it?
Yes, I reckon there's 14 or 15. So last year, in total, we had 32 adults arrive, and we posted back over 100 youngsters. They were from the first, some from the second brood, and they all left the parents, quite a few of them, attempting a third brood, some of which were successful, one just flying past us. Now, the ladies, I've got to give the secret away here at High Ash Farm. I don't actually love horses the way that they do, but I've got all these paddocks, short grazed pasture. The poo on there attracts the flies feed the swallows, and then you've got this happy farmer. You couldn't make it up. So I have to keep that a bit quiet and bite my tongue sometimes, because really
they are symbiotic, aren't they? The horses, yes. And sometimes the sparrows will, not the sparrows, the swallows will keep the flies away from the horses.
Yes, that's helpful as well. And in front of us, about 50 yards away, the farm muck heap, all nicely surrounded by new concrete and a new base, a porous base for it. And at this time of the year, the muck's been cleared, but the new muck's now arriving, and it's swarming with small flies. So the important thing is, when the swallows arrive, they have adequate supply of flying insects. They don't perch up to feed. Everything, including the other species, there's 3 other closely related species. The first one's obviously the barn swallow, which we're watching this morning. The second one's the house martin. The third one is a much smaller one, the sand martin, which nests over in a quarry on the north edge of the farm there. We have been to visit those in the past.
And they're quite a bit smaller, aren't they?
Yes, they certainly are. And they have a kind of brown chest band and a brown back. The house martin, sort of glossy blue-black back on them, quite creamy underneath. But the distinctive thing, when they fly away with the short tail streamers, they display a white bottom. Very distinctive when they're flying. And then the fourth member is actually not related to them at all. More closely related to hummingbirds, in fact, is the swift. And they arrive about 15th of May, average departure. They stay for one season, which is 12 weeks, and leave around mid-August, something like that. And you'll see those in built-up areas, and they'll come right out to the farm here, sort of almost the most aerial bird in the world, and they feed on the insects and take them back to underneath house roofs in Norwich. But here I've provided the special habitat for them, the horse pastures, he says through gritted teeth, with all the insects on, the buildings, and they're really quite used to people going in and out, and the horses in the stables at night, and I can come and check them, and they make cup-shaped nests inside a building, whereas a house martin will make a flask-shaped nest on the outside of a building. Sand martins burrow little holes into sandy cliffs, which are quite scarce in Norfolk. Some people make a false nest. They get a large 45-gallon barrel and fill it up with concrete and perch it up quite high up on top of a pole and drill little holes in the end of it, and that's kind of like a false nest box for them. So there are things that you can do, but my main concern was in May, towards the end of May, when the first swallows hatch, apart from the old pantile building they decided, most of the buildings have modern either corrugated or onduline roofs on, and the one beside us, you can see just over the top of the building 3 swallows all sort of courtship flying around. You can see the roof is a double roof. The old roof I kept on underneath, and the builder who I asked to do it looked at me and thought, I finally lost the plot. You normally take the old roof off. It was still in good condition, not leaking. And I said, no, is it possible to put another roof over the top and leave at least a 2-inch gap? And why would you want to do that? He said. So I then explained about the swallows, and he shrugged his shoulder and said, yeah, I can do that for you.
Because in the past you had cases of birds overheating in the nests and the chicks being, well, falling to the floor, wasn't it? I mean, it was a survival mechanism of the adults.
Yeah, yes, it's just so hot in there. Remember, birds can't carry water, and in the case of swallows in particular, all the moisture comes into the young fledgling birds in the form of insects, which are 70-80% moisture, perhaps more with some of the species. So they're not bringing in caterpillars, which are really juicy. They're bringing in flying insects, which is a huge difference. And so there we are. The double roof has saved the day, quite simply because the weather pattern seems to have changed, and we have really cold spells, which you can have at this time of the year, up to mid-April, before the weather finally gets its act together and starts to warm up. So that's when there's a difficulty in finding enough insects for them. But the rest of the time, particularly in May when the young have hatched and about to fledge at the end of May or into June, the temperatures can suddenly shoot up, and you can have 30 degrees plus at that time of the year. And then the young just get they're almost cooked in the nest, in the eaves, because the buildings are apex roofed and the heat gathers up in the top, exactly where the swallow nests are, and it just overwhelms them. And that was the case for 2 or 3 years until I've sort of solved it by this double roofing mechanism. A little pair there just courtship flying, suddenly dive bombing each other. And remember, they've just completed about a month's journey. Oh. The north migration is much, much faster than the young. The young will often go down south. They seem to have this inbuilt compass, and that takes them down south. Remember, without their parents. Imagine sending your children off to South Africa just with a beak full of insects. You cross the channel, through France, right down the east coast of Spain, Gibraltar, cross the Mediterranean, Tunisia, perhaps Morocco, depending on where the birds have come from. And then after that, anybody who's flown south, perhaps going down to the Canaries or South Africa, if you look out the plane window, you're seeing 1,000 miles of inhospitable territory where it's hot, dry, no water there, and those birds have got to get across that. And the Sahara, if anything, has spread further south and further north. It's sort of expanded its waistband, if you like, on the northern and southern margins, and so the area to the north of the Sahara, particularly, it's almost come up into southern Spain. There's been droughts there, and down south, further into, say, Senegal or the Gambia, it's the first sort of territory the birds can make use of with flying insects. So there we are. So basically what they do when they come on the northern migration is follow what's called a 12-degree therm. That's the average between night and day temperature. At the moment we've got 22, 23 Celsius, 6 degrees last night. You add the two together, divide by 2, and it's gone past 12, so probably about 14, 15, and that means the air in the UK here is full of flying insects.
Tomorrow here, though, we hear on the forecast that it'll not be 22 degrees, it'll be 12 degrees.
That's right.
So it's very fluctuating.
That's the whole trouble. So the whole insect supply is really quite variable at this time of the year. But nonetheless, normally when we see our first swallow, it's a single one, and we've just been serenaded by just they're flying round, and they'll be out over the pastures. Some will be down in the river valley.
They had a lovely little waltz, a sort of a courtship dance. Here we are,
yes,
in front of us.
Right in front of us. And that's a distinctive thing. With the swallows, they have the longest forked tails. So even if you're not an expert bird watcher, you can actually see them just coming in and just pure enjoyment. There they go, into the stables, into the old block.
And
there.
they've got the Des Res there, haven't they? Because there's the
Absolutely.
proper terracotta tiles.
Terracotta tiles, and then sort of insulated underneath. And there's the best part of 20 nests in there. So the idea is, when you've got a declining species, if you can help, I use every opportunity to halt and reverse the decline of any species of bird is a major thing. So you have to provide lots of different things, and including allowing my ladies to tip their water buckets out on the farmyard, which is not normally allowed. So the water runs down because it's so dry here again at the moment. And swallows will use the mud. They make little mud pellets, mix it with saliva, and then bring that back and use that to repair their nests from last year, perhaps reline them with fresh feathers, and then they start laying again within the next few days. 4 or 5 eggs, incubation probably about 2 weeks at the most, maybe 15 days if it's a bit cooler, and the young are then in the nest for 3 weeks. So there's usually plenty of time for a second brood, and sometimes even a third. They're just tireless and timely, and one swallow has to make a summer. You know winter's behind you when you see the first swallow, at least. You forget spring, and they take you straight into summer, and the smile comes back on my face. I know I've now made another year.
One of the most delightful and evocative sounds of the English countryside, Chris, the song thrush.
Yes, it's one of the success stories here at the farm. We've got quite a number of them nesting here, and it's one of the UK's most competent songsters singing away for us.
Just one of the sounds that you can hear regularly on this podcast.
And we've got a little favour to ask. If you can possibly help by sending us a donation to help support the running costs of the podcast by visiting highashfarm.com/podcast.
And thank you for all your donations. We're on the other side of the farm now. I've seen lots of butterflies, and I think I saw a wasp the other day, Chris.
Yes.
It's all brought on by this unseasonably warm weather.
Yes, they're coming out of hibernation. Any butterflies that haven't already been out will certainly be out yesterday and today in these warm conditions. As we drove towards where we are, we're now coming to Notre Dame Wood, and in front of us is a carpet of blue, not bluebells, as we went past one of the Fox's Grove. We went past one of the displays of bluebells, which are just coming out, so we'll perhaps visit that next week on the Countryside podcast. And this is called ground ivy in front of us, sort of semi-poisonous plant.
Well, there's blue
yes, it's very attractive,
Yes.
but ground ivy. And above it is, well, just gladdens the heart, these are all planted, these trees, by the children of Notre Dame School in Norwich. And this was a piece of bare ground, quite a steep escarpment down, not really any use for agriculture, quite sandy soil with chalk quite a way down underneath. And it's the wild cherry, close relation to the cherries that we all eat and love, the sort of cultivated varieties. Nevertheless, this is a kind of parent, and it surprises everybody because although it's quite exotic, it is a British native tree, which means it was here at the end of the last ice age, perhaps when we were still joined to Europe, and many of the trees since then have been introduced by man, particularly if they are of some interest, things like sycamore, horse chestnut, for instance, and even sweet chestnut as well, which we think was introduced by the Romans.
And this one here, festooned in its finery.
Yes, just look at that. If we walk on a little bit more to
Lovely creamy white flowers.
Yes. It's also called Gean or Gean, Gean. So it's got several names. Cherry wood is quite valuable as well. It's one of those woods which turners can actually make into bowls. It's quite hard and it can be polished. It reminds me of my father, really, because he was a sort of ardent pipe smoker, and the bowl of his pipe was always made, he was very proud of it. It was a falcon pipe, but the pipe itself, where the tobacco was put in and pressed down, was made of cherry wood. And there's somehow or other it's meant to improve the experience, but he eventually gave up pipe smoking much later on in life. But I can still remember the sort of pipe smoke in the farmhouse or in the garden, wherever he was working.
It is a lovely smell, isn't it? You've got to say that.
Yeah, it is quite addictive. And he'd always leave me the tins of tobacco, or I got my mum to, probably 2 ounces a week he was allowed. And it was called Player's No Name tobacco. Why I remember these ridiculous things, I don't know.
They were lovely, the tins, though, weren't they? I remember my grandfather would collect them as well.
Yes, and they had a little rubber seal on the inside. But even months after the tin had been emptied, if you opened it and put your nose in, you'd have this lovely waft. But I'm fortunate because I have never smoked and not had the desire to. Thanks to one of the farm workers who did a roll-up for me with some chewing tobacco, and he wrapped it all up and said, "Oh boy, give that a try." And they used to chew the tobacco or smoke it.
That was really nasty stuff, wasn't
It was almost black. Anyway, he gave me a roll up. He said, "Right," he said, "I'll light it for you." And then he said, "You take a deep breath in like that and hold it in there." And he said, "And you'll feel a lot better after that." Well, I didn't feel bad to start with, but a few seconds later, it burnt the back of my throat. My lungs, I thought, were going to explode. And that experience, although it was Horatio Woodcock, the head teasman at the farm, and laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed till the tears came down his face, but it put me off forever smoking.
Horace did you a big favour.
Yeah, absolutely
So
did.
you said he was a teasman. What's that?
Yeah, that was the head. Remember when I was born, all the ploughing here was done by horses. And so you had sort of and people to get the horses ready in the morning, and that would be about 5 o'clock. You'd get them all tacked up, and the head man would be called the teasman. He would be taking the horses out into the fields, all shackled up with a 2-furrow plough which had been left in the field, and they'd spend the day ploughing, have his lunch out in the field, and sort of pickled onion and a cheese sandwich or something like that.
Flask of cold tea.
And cold tea. Look, young rabbit just scooched down. There's a little warren in front of us, and nice buff-tailed bumblebee just over near rat, just going through the nettles there, and that's looking for small holes. That will be a queen. Just as I say, same as you said you saw wasps flying, there'll also be queens. Remember, queens, hornets, bees, and wasps, all the workers die last autumn, including the males, and the females will be mated and they will overwinter. And what we were just looking at was a large buff-tailed bumblebee, quite hairy, so they can work at a lower temperature than honeybees, and it's just scooching round over the ground looking for a suitable mouse hole or somewhere. It's good sandy soil, it's well drained here, and that's a suitable site for them to start off next year's colony, which will either be in an old tree stump or underground.
There's a pile of feathers there. Has something come to grief, do you
Yes,
think?
absolutely. We have peregrine visiting the farm here. I think they might be nesting on Norwich Cathedral again this year, I'm not sure, and that's just a couple of miles away. But the favourite food of the peregrine is wood pigeon rather than feral pigeon, so they'll come out to the farm here, quite capable of taking that. But that's just as likely to be a sparrowhawk, which surprises everybody. The female sparrowhawk's quite a bit larger than the male and is quite capable of killing a wood pigeon. And also in Fox's Grove, only about half a mile from where we're standing, we have had a pair for 2 or 3 years of goshawk nesting. And goshawk, that's the perfect food for them. Goshawk is an old abbreviation for goosehawk, we think. They used to use them for hunting geese out on the marshes. We think that one flying up there, butterfly, that's probably a small orange tip, a female. And she's looking around, and she's just flying around through the undergrowth here of the woodland.
So it's the male that has the orange tip.
That's right, just the male, and she's just...
Oh, here she comes.
Yes,
very
almost
obligingly.
right up to us. Yeah, it does look like orange tip, and she's just going to... Is she going to land by our feet? Just flying gently past us. Now, wafting round like that, the small white, the butterfly on the wing at this time of the year almost certainly is the orange tip, and the food plant for that is garlic mustard, and we passed some of that earlier driving here, which is in flower at the moment, and that's their food plant. They lay their eggs on that, but she now is just flirting around. She's just behind us at the moment, and any second, if there's a male orange tip about, he will notice her if he's kind of either laying in wait or actually flying about on the wing, and they'll mate, and she can then lay her eggs fertilised. But not to forget what we're standing underneath, looking up at the blue sky. It's about 50% in flower. The whole tree in a day or two will be absolutely covered in the white blossom. There are bees working on it. The interesting thing with the white petals is the tree almost comes into flower a second time in about 2 weeks' time when all the petals are on the ground. It's quite strange. It's white on the ground. There's so many petals, and the interesting thing is the bees that are working on this at the moment, they will get fertilised. They'll either produce tiny little red fruit, quite bitter actually, either partly yellow or sometimes almost black, and that is suitable for making a kind of equivalent of sloe gin. You can make wild cherry brandy from it, and I've done that several times. You just gather them, put them in a jar, a couple of tablespoons of sugar, and top up with some not too expensive brandy, and leave for a month or so. And
Not your best Courvoisier then.
No, it's a little bit suspect to use the best on something like that, but nevertheless it does work. And beautiful wood used by wood turners. Sometimes you'll get callus, it's sort of on the trunk there, the big bulge coming out, and wood turners love that. They can sort of make all sorts of ornamental bowls out of it. So it's not long-lived wood, probably 30, 40 years for a tree, and then they just give up the ghost and die. But if we walk a little bit further on, because further down the end of the wood here, is another glorious, glorious sight. So we'll just have a quick stroll, only about 50 yards.
I've just enjoyed seeing the bee's nest in the hedge over there.
Yes,
that you showed us last year.
Yes, a skeleton, because we came here in the autumn, I think, and I was showing you some of the many bird nests that are in this area of Woodland, and it is thanks to the children of Notre Dame School. They did all the work. They planted all the trees here, a whole mixture of British native trees, and I'd already popped some Norway spruce in. The whole idea was it's just going to be a cash crop for the farm, although Norway spruce isn't a British native, and I'd put some Scots pine in here, which is still here. But one night, virtually all the Norway spruce got cut off. They were stolen, loaded on a lorry and taken, and I sort of shrugged my shoulders and rang the local school, Notre Dame, and which is only a couple of miles away, and said, would you like about a hectare of High Ash Farm to plant a woodland on, a new woodland? And they of course agreed, and raised some money, and I think it was Jerry Barnes at Norfolk County Council that commandeered it all, and this is the result.
All those children now middle-aged captains of industry there
yes,
now, aren't they?
1990
Well,
it was planted.
that's 36 years ago.
I know, and they were probably 12 or 15 years old at the time.
Some of them are retired.
No, there's no such word. Hornbeam here on the side, just coming into leaf. Some larch in front. Pigeon's nest right above your head there. Some rooks nesting just lower down.
More blossom.
Yes, and here we go. Just look at this emerging on the north edge of the wood. A little bit later than most of the blackthorn on High Ash Farm. So Prunus spinosa, the spiny plum, and look at that for a sight. I mean, that deserves a place in the most sort of poshest garden you could have, and yet it was a bare area. The children were asked to leave some of the areas of the woodland here, which we donated as bare ground, and there was a single blackthorn came up, and it's done what blackthorn does. It doesn't stay where you plant it. It suckers quite freely, particularly if you put it in a hedge.
Lovely curvaceous duvet of white.
It absolutely is. That's a good description of it. Again, perfect, but is in full flower at the moment, and it has quite a crop of sloes just on this single bush. But all the way round is some kind of dense shrubbery, because it's just spreading out each year.
It's into that hedge there.
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
and it's gone across into the hedge as well. The suckers go quite a distance, and it's armed with fierce spines, and it's called blackthorn because of the colour of the wood, the parent wood in the main part of it. It's almost black, the bark, but home to quite a number of moth species. They lay their eggs in there. Bees will gather the pollen and the nectar from the flowers at this time of the year, and then later on in the year, once it's finished flowering, you get these tiny bright green fruit, about the size of an olive almost, about a centimetre, half an inch big at the biggest, and then that produces the sloes. Now, sloes aren't berries, they're actually called drupes, which is an unusual word. I was called that at school, but I think it was a drip actually. So a drupe has the flesh around the outside, so all the plum species are really drupes, and then a hard stone in the middle, but the seed is in the middle of the stone, so that's the important thing. So birds will eat that, fly off, and then excrete the stone that remains, and hopefully you'll have another blackthorn, which is what's happened here. But nevertheless, it's a British native, really not suitable for planting in your hedges if you're a farmer, although it's fiercely prickly and great for keeping livestock where livestock should be, in the field. So there we are. A quick visit to...
Rat didn't really fancy taking on those spines.
No, he didn't. He's having a scratch over there, but nevertheless, it's a lovely area on the farm. I can walk here more or less every morning of my life, just take him through, put some feed out and feeding the birds in this area of Woodland still at this time of the year.
I've noticed Rat isn't letting you out of his sight.
No, he's become rather attached to me in a glue-like fashion since I've been back from hospital.
I think before your op, he would go dashing off and disappear, wouldn't he? But,
Yes. No, he's for once in his life, I won't call him demented. I don't know quite what. He's really, really good company though, and some of the nights I've been through are quite long, and if you open your eyes then Rat's not far away, and it's very reassuring to have the company and the entertainment that he gives me. He does make me smile as well, so very valuable. Oh, that could have actually been, if they're doing that, that's a female brimstone.
2 lime green butterflies, Chris.
Yes, Matthew, just where we were standing, where the ground ivy is in flower. Absolutely beautiful. I think they were 2 males, because the female brimstone is much paler, and both of those were, yes, one's flown off and the lime green one has just landed. Both lime green ones have landed in the ground ivy there. Oh wow, that's a sight for sore eyes.
Another bulging post bag this week. Thanks for all the correspondents who've sent us letters and emails, and once again a lot of people wishing you a speedy recovery, Chris, which
Yes.
must be rather nice.
No, it's absolutely wonderful to have that support.
Kerry has sent a card with a little diagram of all the different bees, British bees and flowering plants on the front. Wishing you a speedy recovery. Best regards, Kerry.
Yes,
And
and a little note to go with it.
a dog doubles the joy of any walk. Even if it's someone else's dog that you have to listen to. Give him a hug from me, dear old Rat.
Yes, he has lots of hugs as a thank you for all his support. Yes, a very healing dog. Thanks, Kerry.
Vicky McClelland. I love the podcast and I'm a long-term listener. I saw this the other day in the grass, and here's a photograph. I had no idea what it was. Looked like a minuscule mole hill. Little mounds that looked like someone had pushed a pencil into it. I did a bit of research, and I think it's mining bees, as I found a bee in the grass close by. And there's the photograph. It's perfectly little molehills.
Yes, just exactly as described, with a tiny pencil hole in the middle, and it's almost certainly caused by one of the many species of solitary bees in the UK, not necessarily a mason bee. There are other species which are called digger bees, which will excavate these little mounds. So it's going in, bringing the soil out and dropping it around the edge, just pushing it back with its hind legs, and then it will lay its eggs in there with some pollen and nectar and seal the hole back in. And I notice we have another species on the farm which are called sand bees, and they're active from about June onwards. So thank you for that. Perfect photograph, very descriptive.
Odette lives in West Sussex. Horsham Way, I think, Odette. Yes, it is. I moved here last May, and the previous owner told me she'd planted English bluebells underneath a lilac tree. They were labelled. The leaves have come up this year, but not a single flower. I know the soil is mainly clay. Could this be why?
Yes, clay's not their favourite soil, although they will sort of do reasonably well, and nowhere as good as in the UK. Even if you go across the North Sea to the continent, you won't see the kind of bluebell displays that we have here in the United Kingdom, but they are quite sensitive to being moved, and if you plant the bulbs in their first year and the leaves got damaged, they're long strap-like, quite sappy, floppy leaves, and so it might need another year, maybe 2 years to recover completely from being moved, particularly if the root system got slightly damaged. Remember, the bulbs store all the energy for flowering for the following year from the sunshine that we're having at this time of the year. So it can take a couple of years for them to recover once they've been moved like that. It's quite dramatic for them.
Jamie and Leslie, hello to both of you at Saddlebow I think that's Kings Lynn, isn't it?
Yes.
Near the home of Speedway.
Yes.
Saddlebow Road. Jamie says, I'm back on the subject of rooks again. You may have seen this behaviour, but it's fascinated us. We've been putting out small pieces of bread on the lawn adjacent to the spinney, which I mentioned the rooks have returned to and are now nesting. This morning I put the bread out and watched from a distance, and one came down and proceeded to pick up a couple of pieces, walk off, put them down, and then peck a hole in the ground, put the bread inside, find some moss, and then pack it over the top of the buried bread. After doing this several times, it picked up a couple of bits and flew up to the nest. How cute. I noticed also that he also picked up bread and dropped it in our wildlife pond, then came back and picked it out and buried that. What on earth is all that about, Chris?
Well, many people don't sort of attribute birds with having any intelligence, but what's going on there, if you look at the rook, it's all part of a family of corvids. It will include things like jays, who of course secrete acorns in the autumn and hide them up, cache them. Jackdaws will do exactly the same. They'll collect items and store it, be it items of meat or scraps from the garden, cover it up and then come back later. And the rook is just copying what other members of the family will achieve. So carrion crows will also do that. So really interesting behaviour, and soaking the bread is not unusual. It's just they're just very clever birds, I would say. So thank you very much for that. Lovely observation.
Will and Olivia listening County Cork in the Republic of Ireland. On today's episode, the idea of a dawn chorus came up and it sparked something in us. We live very close to a nature reserve here on the Great Island, a wonderful spot with real richness in terms of wildlife. Mooney Goes Wild on RTE, the broadcaster. They run an annual dawn chorus broadcast that has been partnered with Radio Wales and Celtic broadcasters before. And we have a local bird watcher, Jim Wilson, who's already part of the world. The thought of your podcast somehow connecting with that, perhaps even a live dawn chorus from Koskini to your listeners, felt like a seed worth planting. Do you fancy a trip over the Irish Sea?
Well, yes. I'm a little bit stuck to the farm at the moment in recovery mode. But for next week's programme, I do hope to add some of the dawn chorus here from the farm. And I have some historic recordings from about 25 years ago, which are just magnificent, including things like nightingale and turtle dove, neither of which are regular visitors at the farm. But nonetheless, the dawn chorus here at the moment, starting about 5 o'clock in the morning, throw the bedroom window open, and I'm greeted with either a robin, a blackbird, and the fun is you never quite know who's going to start off the chorus of any particular day. It's always lovely.
And here's one from Jan Morritt, who's a Norfolk neighbour not far away in Aylsham. And they say, Jan says, today my partner Dave and I were walking close to Aylsham and sitting in the woods having a snack break when we heard a very raucous call, followed by a sighting of two very large corvids overhead. Even though the phone app didn't pick up the sound, it did pick it up when I played it to Dave's Merlin, which is, I think, the name of the app, isn't it? When we got back, it was a pair of ravens. Ravens! Needless to say, we were thrilled.
Yes, I've had them here at the farm, quite shocked at their really low guttural call. Almost sounded like a frog from a distance. Flew right over my head. Two jackdaws flying in pursuit of it. And it was just awe-inspiring. The size of the bird was absolutely incredible.
How much bigger than a rook, then?
Oh, double the size at least. It's Britain's largest corvid, and usually nests up in Scotland, but they were persecuted northern England because they will steal eggs. They have a reputation of maiming newborn lambs as well. So they're not hugely popular, but they're becoming increasingly common. So out on some of the Scottish islands, if you have a beached whale, for instance, the ravens will come in and feast on the carcass and eat quite a large amount. So, you know, if you're really, really hungry, And I get like that sometimes. I'd say, God, I'm ravenous. Well, ravenous just means to eat like a raven. It's one of the food birds that got into the dictionary with part of its name, so that's what it means. So they're dotted all over the county of Norfolk now. The nearest pier, apart from the ones we saw at High Ash Farm, are about 10 miles away at Cantley, quite near the sugar beet factory there. There's a large corvid roost there, and there's 2 or 3 there, and I expect them, if they're not already, to be nesting in our fair county of Norfolk anytime soon.
Very clever, these phone apps, aren't they?
Yes,
Merlin
yeah.
and the others.
Oh, I heard it this morning. I listened to the recording, and without doubt, that's exactly what it was. So there we are. Thank you for that. Always brilliant to have all these observers out in the countryside contributing to our podcast. Thank you.
Questions, comments, keep them coming in. The email, chris@highashfarm.com. And a big thank you as well for all our donors who contribute to keep the podcast on the road. And you can find out more about monthly donations or a one-off payment to this podcast by looking at the High Ash Farm website, highashfarm.com/podcast.
And thank you everybody who has contributed. It's a huge pleasure, as you can probably guess, to take Matthew around with Rat and we just explore. There's no script. We just come across what we come across, and I just relish in the countryside. So it's my privilege. Thank you, everybody.
This crazy weather, it's 22 degrees this morning. This time next week, we'll probably be togged up.
Yes. You're in short sleeves almost, Matthew. I'm hugely impressed, yeah. So, thank you.
We've had a bit of a gust of wind during the questions, and half of them have disappeared across a field, so I'm going to go chase after them now.
And just look on the ridge line of the field.
Oh, look at
2
that.
roe deer,
Yes.
just skirting across, perfectly shadowed. Lovely way to finish this week's Countryside podcast.